When it comes to weight loss, no two people are the same. That's why Noom builds personalized plans based on your unique psychology and biology. Take Brittany. After years of unsustainable diets, Noom helped her lose 20 pounds and keep it off.
I was definitely in a yo-yo cycle for years of just losing weight, gaining weight, and it was exhausting.
And Stephanie. She's a former D1 athlete who knew she couldn't outtrain her diet, and she lost 38 pounds.
My relationship to food before Noom was never consistent.
And Evan, he can't stand salads, but he still lost 50 pounds with Noom.
I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. Even through the pickiness, Noom taught me that building better habits builds a healthier lifestyle. I'm not doing this to get to a number. I'm doing this to feel better.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom users compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
Say what? You move really fast.
Hey everybody, today's guest is Craig Wedren, lead vocalist and songwriter for the Washington, D.C. post-hardcore band Shudder To Think. Together we take a deep dive into the writing, recording, and inspiration behind the fan-favorite single, X-French T-shirt, taken from their 1994 major label debut, Pony Express record. What a song and what a band. Shudder To Think were on their own program, musically and lyrically. Nobody sounded like them. They were daring, bold, and didn't have any peers, as they were on their own musical trip. And according to Craig, that was the idea from the get-go. This was math rock before it was called math rock. This took progressive elements and mixed it with punk elements, noise rock, and pop. Yes, pop. There's something undeniably beautiful about X-French T-shirt. I leveled with Craig at the very top of the episode that I'd be asking a lot of questions about this insanely unique piece of music. And Craig was as funny and as witty as they come, even going as far to say that all lyrics are about girls and cars. Yes, even Shudder To Thinks. And how did he possibly come up with that, you ask? Well, you're going to have to stick around to find out.
Hey, hey, have you heard? Krista makes a podcast. Hey, hey, have you heard? Krista makes a podcast. Hey, hey, have you heard? Krista makes a podcast. Hey, hey, have you heard? Krista makes a podcast.
We're up over 200 episodes. We're zeroing in another 2 weeks. June 1st, it's going to be our 4-year anniversary here at Krista Makes a Podcast. And I've had some pretty heavy hitters. I've had some heroes of mine as a kid and people I never thought I'd ever get a chance to talk to. Huey Lewis, Dee Snider. Certainly those episodes excited me, but man, I have been on pins and needles all morning. I am so stoked to talk about this song because this song has the dubious honor of being quite possibly the weirdest song ever that I've had, definitely on my show. And I got to tell you, Craig, as you're going to see here in a moment, I go through this like a fine-tooth comb.
I appreciate that because I have been racking my brain trying to remember like how it got made, when it got made, what were the little Lego puzzle pieces that made it get made. And so maybe your fine-tooth comb can jog some memories.
I think it's going to, and I got to say, I going to have a little humility here. I've met my match, okay, where I kind of, my band's a 4/4 3-chord punk rock band with a horn section, okay?
Yeah,
when I start getting into crazy meter time signatures, okay, I can hear it and I can kind of discern at points, but this song is so all over the place. It's out of my wheelhouse, and I'm going to do my best as we go through it. I don't even know if you'll be able to tell me some of the questions that I'm going to ask you, but
I'll do my damnedest.
I remember seeing this song on 120 Minutes, and I remember just thinking, oh my gosh, I think you had the blue eyeshadow on and the dark goatee. You just looked really creepy, and it was like the perfect.
It was kind of creepy. I mean, at the time, now it doesn't look so creepy because we're used to people wearing whatever the hell they want. But in the 90s, despite the alternative moniker, it really was quite conservative and sort of visually hetero, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So we were definitely playing with stuff. But I think personally, in terms of the way I look in that video, the main thing that makes me look so creepy is I had that goatee, and the night before, I have brown hair, with like sort of red flecked brown hair, not black hair. Nathan, the guitar player, had black hair. He used to dye his hair black. And the night before the video shoot, we were all in Los Angeles, and Nathan and I were hanging out at the hotel, and he was just, giving a little black rinse to his hair. And I was like, oh, I should do that on my goatee because that'll be really cool. It'll really pop. Like I knew what the hell I was talking about. And then we'll match. And I really looked like a creep with a dyed black goatee. It was like thick and weird and unnatural looking, and it made me look like, it sort of looked like I had a big merkin on my face or something like that.
You kind of did. And what's great about it, you touched on it, it was the 90s. So it was kind of like, if there was a time this was going to happen, it was kind of like, as far as the look goes, this was going to be it. But, before we started rolling, I told you that my band is from Gainesville, Florida. I've seen Shudder To Think there. I saw you guys with Jawbox. And lately it's just been crazy. We've had Paige Hamilton on from Helmet, and I talked to him about you guys. And I don't know if you recall a band called Spoke, but sure. They were from Gainesville, and they played with you guys. Huge fans. And I talked to Scott yesterday, their bass player. I said, you're not going to believe who I have coming on. You're one of his favorite bands ever.
That's awesome.
And he sent me this. I'd like to read you. I asked Scott, I said, would you mind if I read this to Craig? He said, and they called where they lived the band Spoke. It was the Spoke House. So just think the punk house in every city that we used to sleep on the floor. Here's a Spoke House tale for Craig when you talk to him. They stayed with us and were definitely kind of arty and aloof, which made them even more mysterious to us. After the show, we were back at the house and it was a little bit of a party. Craig comes up to me and he's wearing a tank top and an oversized scarf and says, would you happen to have any lemon tea, maybe with some honey? It was like some alien had landed, because that was an absolutely new request for us Spoke House rats. Right. I remember being kind of confused and simply saying, no, but we've got some King Cobra in the fridge.
I was like, cool. Second best. Always.
But what's great about you guys, and I was talking to Scott about this yesterday, you were on Discord, but nobody sounded like you guys. And I know you went out and you would play with Jawbox and some of those bands. And of course, Ted Nicely, one of the producers really from that area. He produced everybody from Fugazi to Jawbox to Tripping Daisy. And, Ted was involved with this. But I had read a quote when I was researching for this episode that said, and I think it was from you, that said, when we started out, we did our best to not sound like anything else.
Yeah.
And that's fine in theory. Okay, I could go take 2 seconds and record something and throw it down and make it weird, but is it good?
Right. Well, I mean, from the very first time we all got together, and essentially it was kind of happenstantial, where a girl from my high school and I were doing a play. Her boyfriend, who had graduated from said high school the year before I arrived, I had moved from Cleveland to DC in 11th grade. And so I was doing this play with this girl, and her boyfriend was in a hardcore band called Stooge, Stuge, umlauts over the U. And their singer had just gone off to college, so they were looking for a singer, and I had just been kicked out of a couple local bands for singing the way I do. And and so she gave me this cassette of like very much a DC hardcore band. And I thought, what the hell? It's not really my style. I was just never much of a screamer, even though I listened to a lot of hardcore and punk. And so I went to this audition rehearsal, and it was very, you got your chocolate and my peanut butter from the get-go, where it was like, ooh, this probably isn't good. But wait a minute, there's something really strange going on here, and it feels unique. Like from the combination of what Stooge was doing and my voice and what I was doing with the songs and the vocals that the old singer had written at first, just felt like there was I don't know what's the word, when the whole homunculus. Is that the word? Where like the whole human is contained in the seed, sort of, or the whole thing is contained in the seed of the thing. So it was clearly just the seed of the thing, but we all got a hit, even in that first rehearsal.
Oh, that's cool.
That this could really be something. And by the end, we were like, wait, there's something really unique going on here. And we all in the band, and also I think generationally, I would imagine I speak for you too, we all had our roots in classic rock and hard rock and heavy metal and punk and new wave. We were all musically omnivorous. We just happened to be playing in a punk rock band in a punk rock moment of a punk rock town, right? But all it really took was kind of cracking the windows a little bit and letting other influences in that were already there, in addition to the punk rock stuff that was happening and that we were listening to and the scene that we were part of. And then all this new music that we were discovering, whatever it was.
That's really interesting. Let me stop you there real quick,
Sure.
Craig. So, of course, all those things, new wave, rock, metal, we were listening to that, through FM radios when we were all young kids, and they were influences, punk rock. But were you ever into like Zappa, John Zorn, some of the really out there stuff? Because
interestingly, eventually I was into Zorn. It wasn't until I got to college that I started hearing like Ornette Coleman and John Zorn, and it really wasn't until years later, like even around Pony Express record, people started mentioning, particularly in British press, in reviews of like Funeral at the Movies or Get Your Goat or whatever it was, Discord era albums of ours. People would mention artists like Captain Beefheart or Tim Buckley. And so that sort of turned us on to artists with whom we had a sort of spiritual affinity with, I guess, without even knowing it. And the weird, I don't think, I always enjoyed some music that was weird for weird's sake, whether it was like The Residents or Thinking Fellers Union or something like that. But it had to be good, and it had to have melodic content, and it had to have emotional content for me. So, sometimes with Zappa, and we definitely would have been listening to like King Crimson and stuff like that. So we would have been aware of like the sort of Discipline era, like Adrian Belew 80s King Crimson stuff.
What about any prog rock? Mahogany Rush, things of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, like Rush, we would get Rush comparisons, and certainly, we were. I was when I joined, or when Shudder To Think formed, I was probably 17. So when Moving Pictures came out, I was probably 12. Mm-hmm. So I was like, it was total bullseye for me. I was living in Cleveland when I was 12. Moving Pictures by Rush came out, and so that was just sort of like part of my and all of our DNA. Rush, Zeppelin, Kiss, the biggies.
But there definitely was some bands in there. I guess what I'm getting at is where you're going to get these odd time signatures. Yeah. You're going to get these odd ways and bars and beats and just the stuff that you guys are doing. And I got to ask real quick, because I gotta have a little bit of restraint here. I have so many questions because I wouldn't even know. I don't really know where to begin now after being a cough professional musician for 30 plus years, but I'd have a hard time going in with a tempo map now. Okay, with the drummer in my band who's really good, but we play in 4/4 most of the time. Mm-hmm. Once in a while we'll drop into 6, very rarely. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't know where to begin. I got to ask, back in the early 90s, late 80s, when you were writing this stuff, we didn't have Pro Tools. You could make a tempo map. It would have to be on like an Alesis drum machine or something. Because how could you guys get into a room and just improvise this with no click tracks unless your drummer was just that phenomenal?
We just worked it out brick by brick. I wrote the basic... somewhere I have a cassette. I've come across it a few times. I think I must have digitized it. I used to have this little digital cassette clock radio in my bedroom in DC, and this, probably 5-string nylon guitar acoustic that I would write everything on, or write basic stuff on. And I remember with X French, I was in my bedroom. And we were in the middle of writing stuff for Pony Express Records. So we'd been doing these like pretty complex rhythmic and harmonic and sort of chordal workouts. We were not at all technical. Like none of us were trained. So we didn't know what chords we were playing. None of us understood time signatures. So it was purely intuitive, like, ooh, let's try this. Let's try this. Does that work? Does that work? And when something clicked, we would keep it. And then 20 seconds later into the song, when one of us would feel bored again, we would change it. Right. So there was a little bit of kind of ADD songwriting happening there of like, we know we want to do something new. We know we want to do something sort of destabilizing. And we know that we can sound like Shudder To Think and only Shudder To Think. So let's go for that. Right. And we'd made a bunch of records by the time we were working on Pony Express Record, which is the album that X-French T-shirt is from. And so we were like, all right, let's just do the work. So I remember sitting down and we were in the middle, we'd probably written Hit Liquor and Kissy Penny and maybe some other songs from Pony Express Record, which were pretty epic and complex. And I was like, you know what? I just want to write something super simple, almost like Fuck With You simple. Like as few chords as possible, as few changes as possible. No chorus. I mean, we really weren't writing choruses at the time.
Yeah.
No chorus, but like with a big, like I wanted something that acted like a super hooky chorus, but that wasn't a chorus at all. So you get like the second half of the song, which is just one chord with this like hook over the top of it. And so everything is really a build up to that single, I think, what is it? Like B flat. And, which I would not have been able to tell you at the time that it was a like
B flat,
B flat or an A sharp or whatever. I've since, learned to figure that stuff out a little bit. So
real quick, I got to interrupt you again because I'm trying to take myself back, Craig, to being 21 years old and having the discipline, it sounds like you guys had for working out the parts. I mean,
we had crazy discipline.
Our discipline came later. Yeah. Me wanting to learn how to sing properly and really learn how to, intonate and play the guitar and all those things we learn in the studio. But I mean, everything here you're talking about, it was just so light years above the thinking of young musicians. You guys didn't have any peers. Nobody sounded like you.
Thank you. That was our aim, right? In a weird way, I saw in that kind of young, cocky way, or that almost militant, annoying way. Let's call it that assholey young man way. I really took sort of the promise and premise of punk and alternative, right? Which for me was do your own thing. You have license to do your own thing and to invent something new and hopefully worthwhile, as opposed to, doing cut rate versions of whatever was popular, right? I felt, at least at the time, that that's what we were kind of reacting against, and therefore creating something uniquely and truly alternative to sort of the, the cookie cutter, even cookie cutter punk or cookie cutter alt rock or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, and it just so happened that I was fortunate enough to land in a band with a bunch of people who all felt the same way, and so there was really this unified front where we were just in a sort of a total immersion mode. We were rehearsing at this Quonset hut of this hamburger chain. It was like the headquarters of this hamburger chain that my dad owned at the time, called Little Tavern, which was sort of a White Castle-y but DC Baltimore centric place. Huh. And it was really sort of cinematic. It was kind of like a movie set where there were, old French fry fryers from the 1950s and like a jukebox from the early 60s and tchotchkes, but it was very industrial, and we were just sort of set up in the middle of it. And I would just make these cassettes in my bedroom at home of ideas. So the original X-French T-shirt idea is just me strumming on that B flat singing the basic melody. There were maybe some stops and starts, but those little details were often what we would work out as a band in the room. And so when we got to the Quonset hut and started working on this, that's when we started figuring out, like, where are the accents? Where are the stops and starts? When does it push and when does it pull? You know, just in terms of like that whole record and X French T-shirt, there's something very slow about it, or just like it's like pulling back.
It is. It's so sludgy. There's parts of this song where I'm like, you want it to go forward. You're like trying to push the wagon and it's just holding you back. It's got like, man, it's almost like old sludge rock, old, you know, like some of the early Sabbath stuff almost.
Yeah, totally.
But it's not, it's like cut from that cloth, but it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, but then there's also like a Pixies-y thing, or like an early Breeders thing, like from Pod, which you know was a big record for me and for a few of us in the band. And so, you know, there was a lot of that loud soft thing going on that Pixies and Breeders would have done.
Sure. Well, a couple more things before we dive into this bad boy. You guys have released 3 records on Discord, and then your major label debut album, Pony Express Record, came out in September of 94. X French T-shirt was track number 7 out of 13. Mentioned a little bit ago that Ted Nicely was the producer on this. It was mixed by Andy Wallace. And, you know, I'm going to go on and brag about you a little bit before we jump into this. You, as a solo artist, have a couple solo records, Lapland in 2005 and Adult Desire in 2017. But you've also been creating highly regarded music for films. You're good friends with David Wayne, the founder of the comedy troupe The State, and you've appeared in many television series and films stemming from the group and its alumni, including Reno 911 and Wet Hot American Summer. Very cool.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely love that. And doing a deep dive into this song, like I said, I've seen your band. Can't say that I've been an avid listener. Definitely, definitely familiar with you guys. And I love doing this show. My listeners know I say it all the time. I fell in love with music again, and I'm going to go back and do a deep dive of this catalog because you're one of the most interesting songwriters I've met on the show. And
thank you. That's a high compliment.
Let's get into this sucker. It's 4 minutes and 6 seconds, and I don't even really know how, you know, usually I'll go intro, verse, chorus, but this song...
Yeah, it's sort of just like verse. Or it's like verse, noise, verse, noise, outro.
I wrote that at the top here in my notes. I just would write things as I'm listening, and I you know, probably listen to this 25, 30 times in a row, varying volumes and stopping along the way and listening. But I wrote improvisational, yet completely aware and thought out.
Interesting.
So when you're listening to this, if I would have, as a young man, a young kid, when I really loved music, I was glued to MTV and FM radio. 13 years old, I wouldn't have been able to digest this. I could digest this in a live setting. I could go have a couple of King Cobras and see you at the hardback in Gainesville and get it. But on paper, on tape, I think it took me a second. And now I'm just, again, it sounds improvised, but yet completely aware and thought out.
I mean, it definitely felt like a coup for us. We're like, if we can seriously get this thing like played on mainstream alternative radio or 120 minutes, you know, our job is done here. Of course, our ambitions were like total Van Halen level world domination. But in retrospect, the fact that there's so many people who heard the song on 120 minutes and they were, or wherever it was, Buzz Clip, whatever.
Yeah.
Who got turned on to Pony Express record, Shudder to Think. And then that was like a gateway drug for, you know, so much other new music for them.
Sure.
It still feels really good. Like people still come up to me. They're like, dude, I was just listening to like, you know, whatever, Black Flag or Nirvana. And then I heard X French T-shirt and especially people for whom it kind of changed. I always really like music that changes the way I listen.
Yes.
And that changes the kind of trajectory and shape of the things that I make, whether it's music or, you know, visual art or whatever. And so, you know, it's always really gratifying when people are like, oh, it totally like changed my own music or, you know, my own thinking about music. So, you know, it was a cool thing it got as far as it did.
Yeah, this is definitely has me thinking.
Say what? You move really fast. I saw you screaming at the top floor. Big window crash. I'm deaf, so what'd you have to do that for him? And giving.
Say what? You move really fast. I saw you screaming at the top floor. Big window crash. I'm deaf. So what'd you have to do that for? Him?
It made perfect sense to me at the time. What can I tell you?
It did? What are you talking about?
Well,
Tell me.
It's so for me, most of my lyrics, but particularly then, well, no, I kind of always, I keep a lyric when it triggers a photographic or cinematic image for me.
Oh, cool.
Like I've always really enjoyed photography, and I've always been sort of a movie nerd, and I do a lot of music for movies and TV. So there's some like connection between music and pictures that has always been important to me. So for me, I mean, I guess I could tell you like what it makes me think of, but it certainly wasn't. I wasn't trying to tell a story, or it's not about cars and girls, even though I love, lyrics about cars and girls, but plenty of other people can do that. And so we were like, okay, in keeping with the music that we're doing, what's something lyrically that I'm not hearing or seeing? And even though there was a lot of sort of free associative lyrical content in the 90s alternative world,
sure,
whether it's Pavement or Nirvana, for me, it was something more along the lines of dreams, as opposed to like clever wordplay. It was like I wanted to have the feeling like I was in more of a kind of David Lynch reality, which is to say, when David Lynch succeeds at his sort of most Lynchian is like when you're having a dream and you don't know why you're feeling or thinking the way that you're thinking or feeling in the dream, because there's nothing about like, oh, I'm just looking at a cat in my dream. Why do I feel like somebody's trying to kill me? Right? It's like this sort of conflicting puzzle pieces that don't necessarily go together, but somehow make an interesting shape. And so that was always, or at least during Pony Express record, when the lyrics would hit that sweet spot for me and I would get like a little shiver or a little tingle or an image in my brain, I would keep it. So say what? You move really fast. Say what? I think it's something about a girl for sure. I mean, everything I wrote was, but actually it is. It's cars and girls. It's just coded, right?
That's the last thing in the world I thought was going to come out of your mouth today.
It's just cars and girls. We're done here.
No, I'm like, this guy was reading poetry in college.
I was. So say what? You move really fast. I saw you screaming at the top floor. It's like some girl who I'm attracted to, who's, maybe a little bit dramatic or crazy. I can't quite get a handle on her. So you scream at the top floor, big window crash. So trying to get attention, right? Jumping out the window? I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's just like trying to get attention. Big window crash. I'm deaf, right? So like deaf, literally I can't hear. So, your window crash does not get my attention, but also deaf in the hip hop sense, which is like, I'm cool. So
yeah, that's deaf. That's cool. It's boss.
Yeah. So like I'm unfussed, unfazed. So would you have to do that for him? Oh, but maybe she's trying to get the attention of this other dude. Fuck that dude. So with me, right? So I'm just like free associate. I'm just filling in the blanks of like sort of why I kept those lyrics and why they sort of made me chuckle or grin or giggle at the time.
So we're all Van Halen, but it's how good we are at coding it, right? That's what you're saying.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, the only way I could really think, Craig, to go through this was to read them, have you talk about them, and then I'm kind of going to go line by line, because literally line by line in this song, there are things happening.
Okay,
I don't
good,
think anything goes more than 2 bars. It's the same thing. You know,
Yeah.
yes, it's one chord, but just what's happening rhythmically and the time changes are just so cool. Say What right off the top is whispered alone, followed by 12 successive hits all together. Floor tom, snare, bass guitar, and a pair of big stereo guitars. Then you say You, that is also whispered, followed by 3 more of those, dun dun dun, and a snare fill takes us into the next lyric. Move really fast. Drums, bass, and a slightly overdriven pair of stereo guitars join the party. I saw you screaming at the top floor. Guitar pan off left. It's kind of slightly opening a little bit. Guitar left seems a bit more playful than the guitar that's on the right. And I love that because I know this was recorded to tape. It wasn't Pro Tools, so you can feel a real band. There's some really cool pushing and pulling here. It's not lined up great.
I suspect that the sort of right channel guitar, the one that's just kind of holding down the eighth notes, or quarter notes, I guess. 1, 2, 3, whatever, quarter notes. That's probably me because I'm playing rhythm guitar on these songs and singing. So my stuff tends to be a little more bedrock. And then Nathan would probably be the left guitar where it sort of opens up and gets like more swirly.
Yeah. I love that though, because I talk about this all the time. You know, with technology now, and I'm guilty of it. I can't look at the screen sometimes because I want to cut out noise. It's like you're cutting out the feel of the song.
Yeah. Oh, I do. I go through this so much. And sometimes it's really fun to choke all that out and have it be like airtight, especially with pop and dance music. But for me, at least now, digitally, it's so much about colliding, opposing, like super noisy with super digital, with, you know, things off of my phone mixed with things that feel, you know.
Well, I'd also written here, there's the vocal delivery. It's creepy, it's sinister. And you got this, like, there's no way to really describe the sound of your band. At times it's like, oh, he's kind of got like a Jello Biafra kind of yodel going, but it only happens in like spurts. It's like it stops. It's
so funny that you say that, because some Dead Kennedys live thing came up on Instagram recently, and when I was particularly like 12 to 14, huge Dead Kennedys fan. And in my first bands, like when I was 12 or 13, we would always cover, what did we cover? I don't know, something from Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables. And so I did like a really mean Jello Biafra imitation when I was a kid, and a really mean Johnny Rotten, John Lydon imitation, and a really good Ozzy Osbourne imitation, and all of that stuff crept into Shudder To Think. And and so I was watching this DK's video the other day and being like, oh my God, I can't believe how much I ripped off Jello Biafra without even knowing it. Like, probably still, I have no idea.
Yeah, well, it's not hit you over the head. I'm like, what does this remind me of? Like, it's definitely subtle, but it is absolutely there. I know this goes between 4/4. Is it 6/8 that most?
So don't quote me on this, except that I do, because I'm literally saying it on a podcast. I'm pretty sure that if you pop a metronome through X French T-shirt, or if you count it in 4s, I'm pretty sure it stays in 4/4 all the way throughout. Or there are a couple moments where it flips around, where the beat flips. But in general, it feels like it's always changing time signature, but it's only the accents that are popping up in funny places.
It's also where you're coming in with a vocal.
Yeah.
Sometimes parts start and it sounds like a new time signature. You're coming in later than it's not on the 1. It's not even on the 2. It's like, I think that's what is also throwing the ear off on this one. It's so cool. After the line, so what'd you have to do that for? There was an odd break. Just was talking about these odd syncopated breaks. Those distorted stereo guitars come back in here and the band stops and we get a dissonant chord ring over the word him. And then we get another dun, 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 like the top, the whole band. And then there's a single snare hit that takes us into what I'm calling the verse, section 2 of the song. We're at the 28-second mark.
I'm giving it up, get you a little foil. You can't return to us.
In giving it up, you chew a little foil. You can't return. To us, to us, to us. You chew a little foil. You can't return. To what? To what? To what? To what? Do. Giving it up and chewing on foil. Have in common. Bags are packed and out back. Out.
What do they say about chewing on tinfoil? Isn't there something about chewing on tinfoil where you're not supposed to do it? It's like sparks come from your teeth, or it wrecks your fillings, or it does something.
I
terrible.
know if I have fillings, I wouldn't want to put that in my mouth. It'd be like licking a 9-volt battery almost.
Yeah, exactly. So there's something about so the image for me is of somebody who's trying to quit smoking or drugs, or a lover who's not reciprocal. So, you can get hypnotized to quit smoking. You can go to AA, NA, or whatever to quit drugs. In this case, this person is sort of bare knuckling it by chewing on tinfoil to get their mind off their nicotine fits, I guess. And so in giving it up, you chew a little foil. You can't return to us. So you can't return to us. I don't know. There's something just like freaky about that. Like, it sounds like a parent, like a family, like you've shot the bed one too many times and you can't return. Like, once you leave, you can't come back. But then also it's a toast to us, to us, to us. So it's sort of like opposites. There's the you can't return to us, and then there's the like you can't return to us, l'chaim, whatever, cheers to us, to us, to us. What happens after that? To us, to us, to us. You chew a little foil.
You chew a little foil. You can't return to what? To what?
To what?
To what?
To
to
what?
what?
To what? I don't know. I guess that just felt good to sing. I didn't want.
Well,
I probably just didn't want to sing to us, to us, to us again. So to what? To what? To what? To what do giving it up and chewing on foil have in common? And we just talked about that, right? So like chewing on foil is helping this character give up whatever they're trying to.
I love that. And it's absolutely insane to hear you speaking that back, because how many times have you, and we've all seen it, there's been bands and it's just like, okay, they're trying to be highbrow. Okay. They just took some nonsense and threw it on the paper and it means nothing. And you can hear
No. I don't, I really try not to do that. I mean, occasionally, sometimes it doesn't connect, but for me to connect to it emotionally, I feel like I need to connect to it visually and melodically and rhythmically and blah, blah, blah. But just as like a story or as some strange cartoon.
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to my comment earlier, that this is completely aware and thought out. And as a young person, I might have went, oh, this is just, what is this?
Sure.
Because it is abstract in terms of pop radio formulaic songwriting. This is just, it's a different beast. In this section, the drums are nice and big, open hi-hat to start it off, bass and those distorted stereo guitars. On the line, the third line, you can't return. Turn. You hold that out, and you also do the first falsetto there in the song. I love your falsetto. My listeners know I have falsetto envy. I can do it when I'm up here, but like to try to go between my natural voice and a falsetto. Some guys just, I mean, and ladies can just do it seamlessly. But I feel like that's one of your signature. It's a hook for the song, and it's something that is you.
Thank you. I mean, I love my falsetto too. It was contentious at the time. It was sort of contentious until like Jeff Buckley and Radiohead came along, and then it was fine. But I think because I don't know, it probably has something to do with having a theater background or just having being a drama queen at that age. There's something a little bit character-y or like doing a voice about it at times, which I totally understand was could be off-putting for people.
No, I've always admired that in especially theatrical rock, where performers can go into a different voice. That's like whoa, and it makes you feel like it switched from the narrator to somebody else. And I've always loved that.
Hey, everybody, don't go anywhere. We got lots more with Craig Wedren coming right up after a few words from our sponsors.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
One Hit Thunder is a podcast where we both celebrate and have a good laugh about bands and artists that had just one hit that we all know. Each week, we're joined by a guest from the world of music or comedy to learn more than you ever thought you would about some songs that you can't forget. And we decide if they brought the One Hit Thunder or were nothing more than a one-hit blunder. Look, if you listen to the show, you're probably going to laugh, and I guarantee you're going to crush next time the bar has music trivia. Tag Team, Jane Child, Meredith Brooks, Looking Glass, Sean Mullins, Eiffel 65, EMF, Crash Test Dummies, Crazy Town, Chumbawamba. We have hundreds of episodes in our back catalog and a new episode each week, so pass the Dutchie, make sure you're connected, and subscribe to One Hit Thunder wherever you get your pods. And now, back to the show.
On that line, when you say the turn and you hold it out, I put the meter changes. It certainly feels like it. And there's like the top of the headstock when you take your pick and you scrape it. It makes that eerie slasher film, horror film sound. That is panned off to the left on the next line. To us, to us, to us. It's back to those tight quarter
and it's
notes.
That like, damn it. Yes. We always had this power pop thing going on in Shudder to Think. It's like Cheap Trick or something. We're huge Cheap Trick fans. And Cheap Trick always would creep into our stuff. And for me, that banana, again, it's got that sort of early Breeders or Cheap Tricky, I don't know, or even like Donnie Iris or something like that. Like
you're taking the words out of my mouth. You're tripping me out because
it's like the Cars. It's like the Cars.
There's an underlying pop sensibility here that I'm not so certain this would have been on TV hadn't been for that. And the glimmers of pop in this song are very few and far between. I think the most of it we get is on the outro, and we'll get there in a little bit. But on the line to us, we get those tight stereo guitars again, and they're tucked down this time. Insane dynamics in this part. On the next time you say you can't return, the turn is still in falsetto, but it's shorter this time. The big stereo guitars come back in again and stay until the end of this section. I wrote in the notes here, this song's like walking a tightrope. There's so much tension.
Yeah, that's great. Whole time. That's great. It's tension, but I think because it's really fundamentally simple, and also, I mean, the adornment, the details are complicated or idiosyncratic, but it's fundamentally really simple and poppy. And so it somehow, I think just intuitively when we were working on it, we were like, oh, this is great. Like the tension between these two things really works. And one pole, one extreme, helps kind of sell and balance out the other extreme. So like, what might have been saccharine if it had been too straightforward is kept interesting. It keeps one's attention. Right? Mm-hmm. Both the poppy aspirations and the sort of arty ones. So it is. It's like a tightrope, but I picture like a tightrope in like a tutu with no underpants.
That might be the soundbite for this episode. I don't know how we could beat that. On the last line here, bags are packed and out. Back. On back. The whole band stops, and then out is whispered. You want to talk about the dynamics in this track, and I think that adds to the tension. It's going back and forth. You went from falsetto to this just kind of vibrato, jello type tone. To now you're back to whispering. And after this whispered part, there's a whole band. Dun, dun. And then the band is right into what I'm calling the outro. We're at 1 minute and 20 seconds. We still have We still have another 2 minutes and 46 seconds of the song that's an outro with the same 8.5 lyrical stanzas. Okay,
yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, it's a long hook. It's the outro / chorus. It's the payoff.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Me too, that you let me in just to pour me down. Their mouths hold back the road that goes, so that the others may too, that you let me in just to pour me down. Their mouths hold back the road that goes, so that the others may too, that you let me in just to pour me down. So this I remember from the clock radio cassette, the original sort of idea, because I was just like playing on that chord, singing a very proto version of that melody. You could sort of hear it wanting to rear its cute little ugly little head snout, but it took until we were in the space together, really, really hammering out the details, that hook fully realized itself. And once it did, we were like, okay, that's that's like the crown on the song. The rest is really just sort of foreplay. And I think we were just like, well, let's see how long we can do this without it feeling like shtick or without it feeling like a gimmick.
If it was the same instrumentation and the time signature and the drums and the feel and the parts coming in and out and the dynamics of the band wasn't happening, I don't know how many sets of lyrics you could have gotten through. It's like, okay, we get it. But the way that you guys constructed this is genius.
Well, thank you. We played it live a lot. And so when you play in process songs, or at least when we would play out and sort of road test songs that we were working on, a lot of the fat would burn off because both consciously and totally instinctually you sense what is and isn't working. Like you feel when the audience gets closer and you feel when they get further. And on stage, you feel when the band becomes one brick of sound versus when it's sort of, more like choppy fragments, right? The when it becomes greater than the sum of its parts.
Sure.
And when we would play that outro live, it just like became really clear that there was a way as a group, as a unit, that we were able to kind of like dig in, that even if we weren't adding layers, which I think, we did some of overdubs wise in the recording, but live, there was just this thing that would happen where after 2 or 3 rounds, I don't know, we were talking earlier about The State and Reno 911 and Wet Hot American Summer. And there's a thing that those guys do really, really well. And I feel like they may even have kind of pioneered it, which is repeating a joke so many times, repeating the punchline of something that at first is like, oh, that's cute, that's funny, whatever. Or maybe it's like, that's not that funny. Then they'll keep repeating it. And you're like, guys, that's really not funny. And then they'll keep repeating it. And then you're like, oh my God, this is the funniest thing I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real art. And there's genius to it, the way that they do that. And I think that there was, at least, I don't know if it was conscious or not, we were aspiring to that same thing of like, okay, how we're going to do it. It's good. It's hooky. People will expect it to go to the next thing. Then if we keep doing it, they'll probably get annoyed and maybe even bored for a sec. But then if we keep doing it, everybody's going to be on board. And that was just sort of like what started to happen. And I had this little like Boss heavy metal pedal. It's that like black and orange pedal.
I can see it in my head.
Yeah. And it was, and that was the secret weapon of a couple moments in a couple songs on that record. I would just had everything turned up to 11 on that pedal.
Yeah. Spinal Tap it.
And then in the middle, like in the fourth or however many rounds of that outro, I would just kick the heavy metal pedal in and it would just go like...
Yeah, well, we can definitely hear that. We're going to get to that in a second. I'm going to read the lyric and have you break down the lyric for us, if you could. Hold back the road that goes so that the others may do, that you let me in just to pour me down their mouths.
Okay, hold back the road that goes so that the others may do what you let me in just to pour me down their mouths. I will confess that this is one of those instances where no matter how hard I tried to create a lyric that I thought was clear and made that kind of dream logic sense to myself, I was never able to come up with something that sang well phonetically and also had the like standards of imagery that I like to try and go for. So in the end, I was like, you know what? This sings well and it needs to feel good in the mouth and it needs to sound good in the ear. And so at a certain point, I gave up trying to tweak the lyrics. So this is one of those instances where I did the best I could, but ultimately it never quite got there in terms of what I wanted it to do poetically or image-wise, except the end of the line, would you let me in just to pour me down their mouths? I love that image. Like that image, that image I connect to. I like hold back the road that goes, something about like tension and again, this like pulling back. Hold back the road that goes, it makes me think a little about touring. We always had this sort of ambivalent relationship to touring. It's like, oh, do we have to do that again? Can't we just play for our friends? Hold back the road that goes so that the others may do what that's mumbo jumbo. So that the others may do what you let that. That's just saying, that's something that goes phonetically with the melody and with the song. What you let me in just to pour me down their mouths. That's the part that works for me.
I love your complete transparency and honesty with that, because you could have told me that that third line that you just let me in just to, it's about this and this is how it affected me, and it would have been completely fine. I would have been none the wiser.
Yeah, but sure. Well, I mean, it's like it's about like, I mean, as a singer, I'm sure it's kind of first and foremost about personal meaning, and then people interpret it however they want. So we can all say whatever we want about anything. Well,
and sometimes it's got to phonetically sing, as sometimes things just don't work. The word is that's why we got the thesaurus. That's hard to say.
Exactly. Especially if it's the hook. It's gotta go down like, wine.
Well, this lyric that I just read and we just discussed is, I say 8 3/4 times. It's the 9th time that happens. It's way at the end on the fade out. But on the first 4 lines here, those clean stereo guitars are playing. Again, adding to the odd feeling here is the vocal starting a little later. I mentioned that a little bit before. It starts kind of...
It like starts on the 2, right?
Yeah. And it just... Yeah. It's for whatever reason from the preceding parts, it just sounds, in the coolest way, it sounds jarring. And I wrote, is that what I'm counting? Like a 7-bar turnaround, a 7-count turnaround here. I kept feeling like once I was getting into it and then boom, it would change around. And I love that. I love that knee jerk. It just keeps me guessing. And upon subsequent listens, Craig, I still was anticipating. It doesn't get easier to count.
Yeah.
Back out. Hold back the road that goes so that the others may too, that you let me in just to pour
line, hold back the road that goes the second time, another pair of guitars comes in. Sounds like the chords are fretted higher there.
I buy that. I don't remember exactly, but that sounds right.
I love the subtleness of that. And on the lines that you let me in just to pour me down their throats the second time, on their mouths, there's a little, I called it the Blondie hiccup. The tide is high. You do a little, you do a little Blondie hiccup on that line, and then the band comes back in with those stereo guitars, bass, and the drums here. Now we're going into the third turnaround. It sounds now like the vocals are doubled.
Oh yeah, I probably doubled them, and definitely by about the third or fourth one, I'm going like full chest voice.
Yes, well, on the line here now, so that the others may do. I hear that Ozzy you're talking about. It's great, right. Great vibrato on so. I can really, I can hear that now. I wouldn't have thought that, that would be.
And speaking of like theatrical, metal singers, like I think of like Bruce Dickinson,
sure,
and Rob Halford, like all those guys were in the sauce.
On the fourth stanza here, this whole section is incredibly hypnotic, where the vocal swings against the swing of the band. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I worded that correctly, but this part is also super poppy that I wrote here. I'm getting overtones of pop in this complete whirlwind, catastrophe musically of what's going on at points. Right. It's like, what is happening? On the fourth time through, on their mouths, we get the first harmony of the song.
Oh,
it's
that's
killer.
Right. That's
why?
Right. We put in harmonies in the middle.
Why there? Why in that spot? It's so good.
I think it was just all intuitive. It was like, again, this idea of how long can we draw this out and keep it interesting and keep it feeling like it's expanding without...
putting new chords in.
or just like
new lyrics
with the fewest amount of new ingredients. It's like, we'll put a little harmony in there. That'll just give it some lift,
I love it. Well, on the fifth time through now, the guitar lead comes in, playing loosely along with the melody of the lead vocal.
Yeah, that's all the way, Nathan.
I love that. And on the second line, so that the others may do, on the fifth time through, on do, we get the old Zakk Wylde pinch harmonic. Again, hearkening back to our 80s guitar metal gods.
What's a Zakk Wylde pinch harmonic? I don't know what that is. I mean, I know who Zakk Wylde is.
It's a harmonic, but it's pinched. It kind of squeals.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I know
that. Still in the fifth stanza, pour me down their mouths. We get another harmony. On the sixth time through, on the first line, hold back, road that goes, we get a harmony. We also get a harmony on so that the others may do. I'm also hearing here a unison vocal up an octave from the lead vocal.
That's interesting. I don't remember that. So I can neither confirm nor deny.
That's fair. 6th time through still. On that line that's harmonized, so that the others may do. We get another pinch harmonic again. That you let me in just two. The feedback starts to swell, panned off right, and then it comes back to the left on the line, pour me down. We get a cool, it sounds like a guitar pedal feedback, almost like a toggle switch on a guitar.
Yeah, that's right. That's some toggle stuff. Yeah.
I've just, again, where all these little parts that are moving in and out, where they're situated in, it's beautiful chaos. Thank you. That's how I would describe it.
The outro, whereas like let's call it the first half of the song, the verses, are very, very architectural and deliberate. Mm-hmm. The outro is much more instinctual. We were just sort of like going with our gut of, let's try adding this. Let's see if it works. Let's see if there's space for this. If something felt like too much, we wouldn't do it. If something felt like just a slight tonal shift, because we really wanted the whole thing to open up at the end and not feel at all hampered or overly controlled. We wanted it to like go like a road, like a highway, like an endless open stretch, especially after all of the controlled dynamics of the first half of the song. It's just like an exhale, the whole end. We just wanted it to be this like release.
Well, this exhale for Shudder to Think is complete indigestion for most bands. Because there's a lot going on here, but your description is completely, I think, completely on point. From what came before it, the verses, to now, this is pretty streamlined.
Yeah. It's all open. There's something, I mean, as detailed as it is, there's something unfussy.
Well, on the 7th time through, Hold Back, we get a harmony on Road That Goes, and we get a harmony on So That the Others. We don't get it on May Do on that line. And on this turnaround, another lead guitar comes in, weaving in and out of that other lead guitar. I almost thought it was an octave guitar that came in, but it's so cool what the weaving in and out of those guitars are doing, kind of panned left and right.
Yeah. I don't remember that, but that would have been, I assume that would have been sort of Nathan doodling.
It's really cool what it does to the melody, and again to kind of that push and pull thing we've been talking about with the whole song. Still on the 7th stanza, their mouths, we get a harmony, but the melody changes here too. That time on the lead vocal, it goes up. It's so cool. It's just like end of the
mouths. That like swoop up.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's so I love when a song builds and you continue to get new things near the end, as small as they may be.
Yeah, I think we're trying to do as little as possible, rather than the typical rock or R&B outro, which would start doing gymnastic stuff. We really didn't want that.
Yeah, you don't get the vocal, the Mariah Carey vocal acrobatics. None of that's going on here. It's still pretty streamlined. On the 8th time through, again, a harmony on Road That Goes and So That the Others May Do, and the whole mix begins to fade here. It's a 32-second fade out, and I cranked it at the very end to hear if I could hear any last little crackles, and you just basically say That You Let Me In is almost inaudible. You still hear the in there, and then the song is ended.
That's so funny. I didn't remember that it was a fade out, because I think of it the way we play it live, which has one of those big atonal chords at the end, like from the beginning of the song. And so in my brain, that was the way we ended it on the record too, but apparently not. Because, it makes sense. We would fade it out. The road that goes. The road just goes.
Absolutely. Well, I said it at the top. I'm going to say it again. I had a morning, man. I just kept staring at my notes. I kept going back and forth.
I'm blown away that you went as deeply as you did. You're very, very impressive.
No, it's, I'm telling you, I've been at this 4 years. My listeners know my producer on a whim 4 years ago. He's like, you should start a songwriting podcast. I'm like, that's the last thing in the world I want to do. And here we are. I have a ball with it. Some guests and some episodes are a little more interesting than others. This was definitely at the top of the heap of interesting. You were absolutely fantastic. I want to thank you for taking the time to sit in with us. And before we break, what do you got for everyone listening? What do you got coming up?
Well, I just put out a new solo record called The Dream Dreaming. It's actually pretty poppy relative to what we're talking about. I'm waiting for season 3 of the TV show Yellow Jackets to start back up so I can get back to work. Everything's been kind of on hold because of the strikes that were happening for a long time here. So I'm doing that. And I have a new band called Flesh Car, which is at least at this point, a 100% all improvised, pretty heavy. If you like Shudder To Think, you will love Flesh Car. And we're putting out a record next month. And I've been doing a lot of meditation music. It's sort of vocal, choral, ambient music under my name, but it's called Sabbath Sessions. I do it with friends of mine who are meditation teachers and yoga teachers, and so that's my world right now.
Awesome. Well, once again, Craig, thank you so much for taking the time to sit in here and talk to us today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Scream like a woman, spin like a woman, come feel like a woman. Sweet love, I want it inside you, inside you.
Hey everybody, the song you're hearing underneath me right now is Pronouns from Craig Wedren's new album, The Dream Dreaming. You got to go check this album out. It is unlike anything else I have ever heard. It is very unique, very original, and I know you'll love it. I love it. I'm so glad that Craig was on so that I know about this album. But don't do it yet. Do it right after this episode is over, because we still got more coming up right after a few words from our sponsors.
I don't think it overstates things to say that the Beatles were the greatest gift to entertainment and culture of our time, a secular religion, if you will, with their universal appeal and demonstrable impact on people's lives. I'm Robert Rodriguez, host of Something About the Beatles. With every episode, I speak with historians, musicians, artists, and Beatle witnesses, all in the service of fresh insights into the most joyous cultural entity the world has ever known. I hope you'll join me and listen to Something About the Beatles, now on Evergreen and wherever you get your podcasts.
As we near the end of the show, here's a band you might not know.
Welcome to this week's Band You Might Not Know. If you'd like your band to be considered for Chris DeMakes a Podcast, email your best song via MP3 only and a short bio to bandyoumightnotknow@gmail.com. This week's featured artist is Raw Radio, a rock band from Orange County, California, with Rafa Radio on belching vocals and guitar, Matt Data on bass, keys, and backing vocals, and Brian Everyone's Homie on drums, mixing all the goods from punk, ska, rockabilly, blues, and rock and roll. Here's a snippet of their song, Rodeo.
I don't mind the kids play what you say, we all giant ego. You know, sister, break enjoy your little shit, no connection in hell. You tell me to go, this ain't my first rodeo. You tell me to go, this ain't my first rodeo. Toss off signs, yeah.
The Wrap with Chris and Chris.
Chris, I love that episode. I instantly, after we finished, was texting with my friends like, Did you guys know that Craig Wedren wrote the theme song to Stella? He's worked on so many TV shows and movies that my friends and I love, and I didn't know that. I told him, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that before I started doing research for this episode, but I was really happy about that. And as far as this episode goes, Chris, first of all, it was so impressive to hear about, back at the time, such a young songwriter striving to be so original and intriguing.
Well, they hit that out of the park, didn't they? I mean, This band, nothing sounds like them. And again, highly influential. We've had some great artists on lately. Helmet comes to mind. Again, Shudder To Think, that they might not be household names, Chris, but they certainly influenced a whole generation to come after them. I hear everything from Dillinger Escape Plan to Deftones and a lot of bands with odd time signatures and stuff, harkens back to the Shudder To Think sound.
Yeah, for sure. Also, when it comes to lyrics, I thought that was something different we hadn't heard many times on the show, that he keeps a lyric when it makes him think of something cinematic. And, he compared it to like David Lynch, like a David Lynch movie or something, where it was just, he saw something in his mind. And I was over here cracking up when he said, yeah, we don't write about cars and girls. And he's like, well, actually, this one kind of was that. Even though, like you said, we're all Van Halen. Some of us just code it differently, which is what he did.
His sense of humor, I read the message from my friend Scott, and admittedly, Craig was into poetry and literature and whatnot, and artsy, I guess you would call it, and aloof maybe. And he was everything but that. He just came across as he gets it, and I'm just still intrigued of how they were able, and he never really answered the question. Did they rehearse to a metronome? Like, how did they come up with this stuff at that age? And to have that work ethic, I can't stress that enough. My band didn't have that work ethic. We were out there practicing, but we were doing other things that took precedence over being great musicians. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I think that my experience of being a young musician, we wanted to get better and better and better. But in our early stuff, we just couldn't wait to get out there and be on a stage and playing the songs. It was almost like the songs were a necessity so we could get up there on the stage and play. And, as time goes on, you refine your craft and everything. But it sounds like Craig and his guys came into it striving for that from the very start. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, and I didn't ask him, but if I was to guess, this was cut to tape. They probably recorded the basic tracks live. It at least sounds like that that push-pull we're talking about. And he mentioned it early in the episode. We didn't really touch on it later, but there's a sludginess to this song. At the end of the tune, it sounds like sludginess, almost like Melvin's or something, where it's just like you're just waiting for it just to speed up just a hair or two, please. But it has this ominous heaviness to it. It's really cool. Yeah, and the repetition of the lyrics at the end. And I swear to you, I was going to say this to you in the rap and to Craig, but then he brought it up. I love that he related the comedic sense of his friends from the state and that crew to his music, because I was already thinking that. I was thinking, this guy approaches music like those guys approach comedy. And he brought it up in reference to the repetition of something, the way that, those guys would make a joke and just keep repeating it and keep repeating it and keep repeating it till finally it's funny. And he kind of said that in relation to this song too, which I thought was really cool that he related that. It was awesome because he talked about it in the live sense too, of they went out and played these songs so many times, this song so many times, that they refined it, as he said. Mm-hmm. They took out parts, they cut the fat, they got it to where it just felt undeniably so good. We know when the audience is going to get in our face. We know the part they're going to react to. And by the time they went to record this, it kind of was locked up tight and flawless. Yeah. I also earlier in the episode, he was saying that every lyric is important to him. He doesn't let things pass. But then at the end, he's like, you know what? I got to admit, these words at the end, I had to let some of these just go because they felt good coming out of my mouth. Like you said, the words have to work phonetically sometimes. You might try to stuff stuff something in there because it's what you really want to say. But sometimes it's just undeniable if something just feels good when you sing it.
Yeah, and I love his honesty. You know, he's just like, the third line just wasn't that great, but you know what? It is what it is. Like, I wanted it to be something more. I could never find the right words. And had he told me the opposite, like the third line, this is the one that really means something, and it means this, I would have believed him. You know, music is so subjective. It's so cool.
Yeah, it wasn't like it was a bad lyric or something, but he was just, no, it felt good to sing. And Chris, the one more thing that I had to note, there was a Donnie Iris shout out in this episode. Yes. Do you know Donnie Iris? Do you know who that is?
I do know Donnie Iris. Absolutely.
Okay. He's a Pittsburgh legend, and he had a couple huge songs, you know, in the 80s, but I don't know, like Craig's originally from Cleveland, so that's not too far from Pittsburgh. So I was like, wow, Donnie Iris, nice. Donnie Iris is someone that I've always want to come on Chris DeMakes a Podcast. He's in his 80s now, but he also has the most Pittsburgh sounding name, Donnie Iris.
Yeah.
I love that you know who that is.
I do know he and Craig dropped a lot of names I didn't think he'd be dropping in this episode. Yeah. It was such a pleasure. Hey, head over to chrisdemakes.com. It's our VIP program where you can get bonus episodes of the After Party, our other podcast. chrisdemakes.com. Head over there and support the podcast you know and love. We'd appreciate it. And please give me a follow on Instagram at @LessThanChrisD, and my wonderful producer over here, Mr. Chris Fafalius, at Chris Fafalius. We'd appreciate it. I want to thank this week's guest, Craig Wedren, for sitting in with us, and we'll see you next week.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bruce.
And I'm Nolan, and this is the Corner of Gray Street podcast. As longtime Dave Matthews Band fans, we set out to create a podcast to dive deep into the past, present, and future of DMB.
Not only do we recap and review shows within an ongoing tour, but we revisit past shows from throughout the band's history, conduct interviews with a wide variety of guests with ties to DMB, and create unique and exclusive content like our Concerts on the Corner series.
Whether you're a fan of the band or just a fan of great music, we think you'll find something you'll enjoy. We can't wait to see you on the Corner of Gray Street.